Good morning, afternoon, evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to be doing a special 30-minute program here at allpointstv.com. I'm George Moss, the host of the program that comes on regularly on Mondays from 2 o'clock to 3 in a program called What's Going On. But we're doing a special edition today with a special guest out of New Hampshire, Mr. Rod Eccles. And I'll be learning as much as you are going to be learning today from our discussion with Mr. Eccles. Mr. Eccles out in New Hampshire. Mr. Eccles, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Mr. Moss.
Okay, we've been having a few glitches here, but knowing our technician, John Wilson, who is one of the best at what he does. Now, what he does, don't ask me, but whatever he does it well. I don't know anything about technology. I just come in and do the program. Tell me about yourself, a little bit about what you're doing. I've heard your name a couple of times, and somebody associated your name with one of my favorite commentators that comes on here in Flint from 12 to 3. That's the impeccable Mr. Rush Limbaugh. So whenever I hear somebody's name associated in the same vein as that remarkable person that comes on 3 hours a day, 5 days a week, I have to inquire, who is this person? And now we're finally getting a chance to talk to each other. Why don't you tell all of us, so I'm learning something too, about who you are and what you do out there in New Hampshire?
Well, I have a tagline, and it goes like, "I'm the coolest, most politically incorrect conservative black man on the planet." Now, I have to admit that there are some people out there who don't like me saying that because I evidently they say I cannot prove that I'm the coolest, most conservative, politically incorrect black man on the planet. I just say that all you have to do is listen to me and realize that I am very conservative. I'm a constitutional conservative, and that's one of the reasons why back in 1992, my family and myself decided to move to New Hampshire from upstate New York. I'm actually the son of a career military veteran. He spent 21 years in the United States Air Force. My father is a hero to me, and I've always been taught that people have the ability to do and take care of themselves, and in fact, it's their responsibility to society and their family to take care of themselves, not to depend on the government. And my father always said that is the reason why he entered the military. It wasn't just because it was a job, but because it was to protect not only his family, but a way of life in this country. So I've always admired my father for that sort of tenacity and commitment. Mm-hmm. And after moving out here in New Hampshire, I realized that I was becoming more and more conservative after seeing all kinds of liberal policies and projects and things failing. And then one day back in 2009, I had a blog on Yahoo, that when Yahoo had their GeoCities and things like that. I had a blog that I had been operating on since 1999, and in 2009, 6 years later, it was due to something that Obama was doing and saying on the campaign trail and being elected, that kind of thing. And I don't even remember exactly what it was now that sort of set me off, but I was literally banging on my computer keyboard trying to type out my frustration. And I decided that I was going to break my keyboard, so I needed to have something that was a little bit less violent, a little bit easier and quicker to do. And a blogger that I was following at the time started putting audio on his blog. And I thought, well, gee, that's a great way to go. So I started searching for a way to do that, and I just stumbled across a few sites that allowed you to do just that. One of those was Blog Talk Radio, and I decided just to give it a test. And I started out doing an hour-long show, and about 2 weeks later, I had my first call. Within the first 3 months, I was getting calls as far away, live calls on the air, as far away as England, Israel, Australia, even France and Germany. So, and it was kind of it wasn't something that I would get into purposely to start a radio talk show, but it definitely became that really quickly. And I was broadcasting for about 3.5 years, and my numbers were starting to go through the roof, and I ended up on a couple of other networks, and one of them unfortunately folded.
Mm-hmm. Now, did I understand you to say that you were banging on your keyboard in 1999, or was it 2009?
2009, I was banging on my keyboard.
Okay.
Rather hard.
At what point, I think that's when I was banging on my keyboard too, at what point did you discern that we had a problem? You talked about Obama's being elected. At what point did you discern that there was some problems here?
I had seen that we were having some really serious problems ever since when I was paying attention as an adult. Since Bill Clinton. Now, I have to admit, I always thought that Bill Clinton, even though he was a disgrace to the office, was probably one of the most fun presidents we've ever had. It was hard to be mad at that guy. Because even I believe that Bill Clinton, even in his core, he did in his own way love this country. But he was just a liberal who was more interested in having sexual escapades than actually doing what was best for the rest of us. And once you knew that, it was kind of a way to get rid of him and elect somebody who's conservative. And I've always said that you should always vote for the most conservative candidate you have available to you. And at that point, it became George W. Bush. I wasn't fully happy with that choice, but he was more acceptable than obviously Al Gore at the time.
Mm-hmm. Well, you mentioned that you had some problems with him in a sense, but you did sense that he loved the country. Are you saying that the present president, that you're feeling somewhat like Giuliani feels about him in terms of maybe not being the greatest patriot we've ever had in that office?
You know, I didn't used to think that way, but a few weeks ago, something was bothering me about Obama, and I was trying to figure it out. So I just actually sat down and went over all the information that I had and that I could find, and I came to the conclusion just by Obama's own personal history, and what he had said while being in office, I've come to the conclusion, no, he doesn't love this country.
Did we get cut off?
No, I'm still here.
Okay. And what was it? What were the indicators?
Some of the things that he has done and said, as in apologizing for America, is saying that we've been arrogant as a nation. His belief that when he was on the campaign trail and in his acceptance speech that he wanted to fundamentally change this nation. You do not fundamentally change anything that you love. Sure, you want to improve it, but you do not want to fundamentally change it. Because if you loved it, you wouldn't think that there's anything fundamentally wrong. It just needs improving.
Well, at what point did you hear him saying that? I didn't hear that particular part of his message until about 5 days before he was getting ready to be inaugurated, where he said that we are 5 days away from fundamentally transforming America. I didn't hear that during the campaign. Did you hear it during the campaign?
No.
You know,
he didn't say. I did not hear those words come out of his mouth, but I think he was making it clear that he wanted to make some major changes in the way this country was run. One of the things I've always said about Obama, because people always said, well, he's got to be smart because he's a constitutional conservative, or excuse me, a constitutional professor. And I said that's exactly what makes him one of the most dangerous men in the country, because he is a professor of the Constitution. He taught it. He knows exactly how to get around it, how to use it, and probably how to get away with it. And what we've seen over the last 6 years is this man doing exactly that, skirting the Constitution and getting away with it.
Yeah, I don't get the impression. Now I don't know whether or not he was I don't think he was a full-fledged professor, but I don't get the impression that he's all that familiar with the Constitution. Do you get a sense that he really understands? I understand what he's doing, but do you get the impression that he knows the Constitution that well?
I believe that he really does know it, which is why he does the things that he does. He tests the water a few times with some of his executive orders. Now, understand, every president has issued executive orders, some presidents have even issued some very controversial executive orders. Don't get me wrong, Obama is not the first one to do that.
Mm-hmm.
However, he is the first one to actually push the limit of testing the waters and then continuing to move that bar with each successive controversial executive order, culminating with the current one about illegal alien amnesty. Mm-hmm. Now, there's no way any other president would have been able to get away with doing that type of thing. Mm-hmm. This guy is getting away with it.
And you think that's because of his race?
I think it's because he really understands how to push people's buttons, how to manipulate them, and how to use the Constitution against the Constitution. Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you what really pricked my interest in that particular part of his legacy, whatever that legacy will be once he leaves office. And I'm going to ask you later on if you think he'll be leaving office. Some people are thinking he's going to stay in there. But I began to pay attention to this president on June the 4th, 2009, and that's when he spoke at the University of Al-Azhar in Cairo. And I looked at that speech. In fact, I heard the speech first, and I went and got a copy of the speech. And I just read it from top to bottom, and everything he was saying in that speech was troublesome to me. And that's when I started to really listen to this man, because I was out there in Denver when he was, in fact, made the nominee officially of the Democratic Party. I went to Denver those 4 days of that convention. And I was in the crowd, cheering him on and all of that. And it began to, once it started to rain, I guess that's what you call it, a rain in this administration, then I began to listen to this man a little bit more carefully. And what I was hearing was something that was really bothering me. At what point did you begin, this was June 4th I'm talking about, at what point did you begin to really pick up on some other antennas of what was being said that bothered you?
I didn't really pay all that much attention to him at first. Mm-hmm. I didn't even really know who he was. I knew that he'd given, a few speeches and he was a young gun out of Illinois and that kind of thing. I didn't really know who he was. I don't think anybody really did. Mm-hmm. But I was focusing more and paying more attention to Hillary Clinton. And then all of a sudden, one of the debates between him and Hillary, everything seemed to change in the Democratic Party. And Hillary started to slide. And he started to rise. And I'm thinking, what is it about this man, other than his skin tone, that is capturing the imagination of the Democratic Party and liberals everywhere? So I started paying attention, and he started slow. I like to say that he started slow. He started sounding like FDR and John F. Kennedy wrapped into one. And he had good looks. He had what people might call a sexy radio voice. So I knew he was going to start capturing people simply because of his persona. And he was starting to make himself appear to be something that he wasn't. Now, granted, I didn't realize that he really wasn't FDR and John F. Kennedy rolled into one, that he was something much, much worse. I didn't realize that at first.
Did you vote for him in 2008?
No.
Okay.
I have never voted for him.
Okay. Well, see, I voted for him in 2008, but after 4 years of the misery index going up, I certainly didn't vote for him in 2012. I thought Romney was head and shoulders a better candidate than he was, and I thought Romney won those debates as well. But I was voting for him based on his policy, and I had had enough of Obama's policy over the last 4 years. I was really surprised he won a second term, given what I consider to be the damage he had done to the country. So you voted for John McCain then in 2008.
I did vote for John McCain, although I was like a lot of Republicans and conservatives and independents. I sort of held my nose. He was not my first choice.
You would have taken that too. Know your nose.
He was my first choice, but again, he was the most conservative.
I understand.
That could win. So.
I see. I can tell that you were raised. I'm going to take a guess here. You don't have to tell me whether I'm right or not. But I think you probably were raised in the 1950s range, because you were talking about your father and the lessons that you had from your father. It wasn't dreams from your father like Obama, hopefully, but which were anti-colonial dreams. But I take it you were kind of raised in that time period when the two-family household was more the norm than it is right now. Are you retired from the military?
Am I retired from the military?
You say you were in the military, so I'm asking, are you retired? Did you retire from the military?
No, my father did.
Oh, your father did?
Yes, he spent 21 years in the military, and I'm actually a 70s and 80s child. I kind of grew up I graduated high school in the early 80s.
How in the world did you escape and become a conservative, given at that time you were beginning to change because of the 1965 voting rights bill that Johnson had signed into law and got all this credit and got all the black people confused, as if the Democratic Party has been our saviors forever, and they were the ones who actually had black people out there in the cotton field picking cotton. I mean, we're so confused now. And so, how did you get to the conservative? Was your father conservative?
I never really my father never really talked about who he voted for. But there were instances where he made clear who supported, and he was, now this is kind of strange because my father was not a Ford supporter, but he was a Nixon supporter.
Mm-hmm.
He was also a Carter supporter until Carter ran for re-election. When he was in the military, he realized that Carter was an idiot. And he became a Reagan supporter.
So you voted for Reagan?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He's taught me basically to actually look at the man or the woman who is running for office. Mm-hmm. I don't care what your party affiliation is. I have voted for Democrats in local elections in the past,
mm-hmm.
But because I care about what they stand for, what they believe in, what type of policy or platform that they have that they want to try to achieve, and I don't care if it's an R or a D or an I. It doesn't matter. And I believe that's what a constitutional conservative actually. They don't vote party; they vote person.
I think if you're a constitutionalist, you have to be a conservative. I don't think you can be. You can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if you can be a constitutional liberal. You think that's possible?
No.
Yeah.
No.
So
everybody wants to say conservative. So it's kind of, if you say you're a constitutionalist,
mm-hmm.
people don't either they don't fully understand it or look at you like you have two heads, like you're a libertarian anarchist. I'm not a libertarian at all.
I see. Well, what's the difference between, in your mind, what is the difference between a libertarian and a conservative?
That's a great question. Constitutional conservative believes that the Constitution is our basic framework, how we govern ourselves and run our nation. Mm-hmm. And that if there's something that needs to be changed because the times change or the people change or the people want something different, there is a mechanism that allows people to legally amend and change the Constitution to better fit what the people need and want. A libertarian believes that the Constitution was best when it was first written. It never should be changed. We should have the absolute most minimalist type of federal government. In fact, a libertarian believes that government above the county level should be so minimal as they have very little to no power, so therefore you'd be on the edge of anarchy. Mm-hmm. A constitutional conservative believes that there should be a government, a strong government, that is able to protect the liberties and freedoms of its citizenry. And you can't do that if you're if you're living in an anarchistic type of society.
Yeah, I'm reading the book right now, written by Ron Chernow. It's a book on Alexander Hamilton, and it is really interesting to read at the very beginning this question of big government and small government was being raised in the first administration. That discussion between Alexander Hamilton, for example, and Thomas Jefferson, where they were trying to restrain Alexander Hamilton, we're beginning at that point to begin to extend what was really intended at a convention that had been held really in recent memory, and he was one of the ones advocating for it in the Federalist Papers. What is your view on something that just came up in the University of Oklahoma? Where are you with this issue that the president of the university, David Boren, sent those students home for making racist comments on that bus in that fraternity they belonged to?
Yeah, I think he's made a mistake. I think he's made a huge mistake, and I think it's a mistake that is going to negatively around seen the video.
Mm-hmm.
I do not care to see the video. However, I have heard so much from both sides of the aisle. It really, sometimes I really want to just get sick and throw up.
Mm-hmm.
Because many people are missing the boat. We live in a nation where we have the freedom of expression. As vile as that expression might be, the person has the right to express themselves. We may not like it, but we don't have the right not to be not offending. People think, well, I have the right not to be offended. No, you don't.
Yeah.
That's not the case. So, yes, what they were doing was offensive. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe because we always see how young people, and this has always been the case. They're nothing new today. We've done the same thing when we were kids and our parents were kids, doing things that everybody thinks is cool. Mm-hmm. So they probably thought they were doing something that they thought was cool at the moment.
Yeah,
they
hey, girls in the
carried
best
away. Fine. The point is you don't expel students at a university where you're supposed to be teaching shit of the country. In other words, part of that stewardship is freedom of expression, freedom of speech, freedom of the press. Mm-hmm. So if you start expelling people, yes, don't get me wrong, there are, free speech, but there are also consequences to that freedom. Granted. However, you do not take the consequences to a point where it becomes nothing more than trying to shut down an opinion that you do not like, censorship. Because that's going to end up hurting the country. Mm-hmm. Me as a brown person, as some people call, is I'd rather hear them talk and express it because I would rather know, face up, who doesn't like me for my skin color versus not knowing and then having to always look behind my back because somebody might be there with a giant knife to stab me with it. Mm-hmm. It's saying that you would want to shut people up because of things that you don't like what they say because they will go into hiding. They can go underground, and you will never know what they're doing until it's too late.
Mm-hmm. I have to tell you, I was offended by the position taken by Sean Hannity. They had a program on this week, and two of his guests, they were David Webb and Michael Myers from New York. I think he's over the Civil Rights Commission there or something of that nature in New York. And they were taking the position that you're taking and the one that I take, and that is that this is a speech issue, and they weren't hollering at anybody or threatening anybody with their speech. And I thought David Boren had reached, that he had really flubbed a teachable moment. He could have, on the one hand, taught intolerance and maintained at the same time the integrity of the Bill of Rights. And I think he failed that and flubbed it on both levels. I was very offended by the suspension of the students. I don't agree with their speech. Of course, I would, there are a lot of person that's talking that you may be offended by, but you don't have to defend popular speech. And I don't think David Boren, the president of Oklahoma University, understands that. So we're on the same page as far as that's concerned. Now, your name has been mentioned in the same breath as Rush Limbaugh. Is there any connection between what you do and what Rush Limbaugh is doing?
No, I don't make a comparison with myself and Rush. I let other people do that if they want to. If they see a similarity, that really has nothing to do with me. I do not personally try to emulate Rush in any way on purpose. I will admit that, and I'm not the only one, when I do my talk show, my radio show, that I do emulate his formula, his format. And I'm not that everybody does, because, he's proven that his formula is success. So if you want to be successful and reach a wider audience, you have to do something that people have come to expect and accept. His formula of how he runs the show is the gold standard. So other than that, if you're going to say that's the reason why, well, then I guess, Sean Hannity and Mark Levin and just about everybody else also emulates Rush. But other than that, the only thing I've ever said about me and Rush together is that I have said that sometimes I'm so conservative I make Rush Limbaugh look like a liberal.
That would take some doing. What do you think about what do you think about Mark Levine?
I'm sorry, who?
Mark Levine. What do you think about him?
He's a very learned man. If I understand Levin, what I know about him, he is a constitutional attorney, I have not read any of his books.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't really comment fully on what he might be like or who he is. Just from what I understand from listening to him being interviewed on other shows and things like that. That's about it.
Yeah, I think Mark Levin stole one of my ideas and wrote a book about it. I can't prove this, and I'm saying it more or less tongue in cheek, but I called for a constitutional convention in February of last year, and then 6 months later, here comes Mark Levin out with a book that made the same points I had made in my writing a post on Facebook. Let me ask you, now you have a radio show. We here at the studio, we are a podcast production, so we stream live on the web. Is your program a radio program? Is it available on the web where we could pick it up like on the computers and that kind of thing, or no?
Yes, it is. It's actually on the Blog Talk Radio network, or blogtalkradio.com, and it's simply Rod Eccles. And I'm on there live Monday through Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern, and Fridays I usually have a broadcast of an old archive episode, just to help people understand that when I started back in 2009, I'm the same then as I am today, that I have not changed. A lot of people like to say that, well, you can change, or you probably change in order to get better ratings or make money or what have you. I'm like, no, and this is proof. Just go back and listen to some of the old episodes. I'm saying pretty much basically the same thing. In the same manner back then as I am now. I have not changed. I'm still just as conservative and a believer in the Constitution and in love with this country as I've ever been. So.
Mm-hmm. Your program starts at 8 o'clock. How long is your program?
It's a 2-hour program.
From 8 to 10?
Yes.
Okay, so we are, right now, we are on, it's 2:25 here. Are you on the same time? Are you Eastern time in New Hampshire? Eastern Standard?
Eastern time.
Okay, so we are in the same time zone. I'm going to have to look up your program. You're saying that you're on, so I can pick you up on the computer, since you stream both on radio and on the web?
Yep, it's just blogtalkradio.com.
Okay. I'll be picking that. I have not seen your program before and heard your program, but I'm really interested, particularly when I find a black person that is a constitutional conservative. I don't think you run. I know I don't run into a lot of them. Do you run into a lot of black constitutional conservatives?
No, I don't really. One of my goals is to kind of be an educator, and every time I speak to fellow blacks, and it's I talk to them about history. And for many of them, after I explain history and they learn about history, many of them actually go and look it up themselves, they do come back to me and say, you know what, you're right, I can see the difference, and they start to flip and become more conservative.
Yeah, I have a lot of people like that in terms of, because what has happened is that the Democratic Party has deliberately muddled the history because their party's history is very putrid, but they've rewritten it so that they're the heroes, and the Republican Party that's had the positions that have really brought black people forward, they have gotten all the blame for all the baggage that belongs to another party. It's amazing. And in fact, I'll say this as well, that's what I saw down in Selma. They were down there celebrating all these things, and you never known that the Democratic Party was the one holding the blacks in the South in place. And you never know that by the demonstration down there. There's John Lewis and there's Obama. They down there like they were down there celebrating what they did, what the Democratic Party did, when they were the ones holding black people down. So you said you teach history, you talk history to them. What are some, can you give us a couple of book references that you might recommend some of the listeners of this program could probably gain from? What kind of sources are you using?
Actually, I go back to one of Rush Limbaugh's books, The Way Things Ought to Be. I think it's a highly influential read, even to this day. I mean, you can get maybe a little bit dated, but still the whole premises of it is dead on today, as when he first wrote And I have mixed feelings on Glenn Beck. I'm not sure exactly where he's coming from.
I don't either. He's all over the place.
Sometimes he talks about aliens, and sometimes I don't know.
I'm getting to think that Glenn Beck is an alien. He's all over the place. He's down there wanting to feed the ones that broke into the country. Then he talks about something else about the Constitution, and we should in fact obey it. And I don't know where he is. He's been really highly criticized by Michael Savage. I know that, and I've been critical of him. I don't know where he stands. I did like his program on Fox when he came on at 5 o'clock, and I know that he got booted off because he was upholding the Constitution. And now I don't know where he stands on a lot of the issues. What is your viewpoint of people like, let me name some names here, Alan West and Ben Carson, Mia Love out of Utah, Brozell, what's her name? Some of these conservative blacks.
That's a lot of them. Alan West, I have not listened to him in person, but I have watched a lot of Alan West interviews. I've seen a couple of his speeches on TV and the web, and I think he's an amazing person. Mm-hmm. I think he is absolutely fascinating. I think he's a true constitutionalist lover of the country. He's a retired military officer,
mm-hmm.
And
respects the
that
Constitution.
Lends himself to being very disciplined, and I like him. I like a lot of what he has to say, and he has been unfairly targeted and railroaded by the left.
No question.
Say that about him.
And he doesn't expect that. What do you think about Ben Carson?
Ben Carson is another one of those enigmas. Now, there are some things that Carson says that would make you believe that he is a full-fledged conservative, and then there's other things that he says that makes you think, well, wait a minute, that's not very conservative. That's more of a liberal thing. And I believe Dr. Carson is a very good doctor. I do not think he's going to make a very good national political leader.
Mm-hmm. Particularly his position on the Second Amendment, I couldn't believe what you're saying there. John, you're saying we have to wrap it up at this point? You have 2 minutes? Okay, we got about 2 minutes. John, I try to get off when John says get off because he starts sawing his neck off, give me that sign of cut, so I don't want to saw his neck off. He said we got 2 minutes to go. So if you had your choice in 2016, and I have pretty much picked up that you do not think that you could vote for Hillary Clinton no matter what her emails say. So who would you like to see run in the Republican Party in 2016? Who do you like?
Right now, I can endorse or support anyone. I want to see as many people as possible get into the race, possibly get into the race. I want to hear all the different views. I want to hear everybody's ideas. I want to find out who's a constitutional conservative, and then we can really get into who would best be for the Republican nomination. I mean, there are a lot of good ones. There are Rubio, Ted Cruz, although there's question about whether Ted Cruz is eligible to be president. I don't know.
If Obama is eligible, he should be eligible.
We got Walker. Whoever it is, as long as they're a conservative and they espouse conservatism and constitutional ideals, I think that's who I'll be willing to get behind. Mm-hmm. At this point, not everybody's even in the race yet, so I can't even say. Mm-hmm.
Well, Rod, John's giving me the signal here that we have run out of time. It went by too fast. I wish I had more time to talk with you, and I'm looking forward to...
I also like to say that, Rod, would you please tell people once again, where they could find you, your times of the show, and so before we wrap this up, so could we want to get that out there so people can, hear this new voice out there for us, Thanks. Just go repeat again, okay?
Did you hear him? John wanted to know, again, before we get off the air, how can people find your program, and give us the time again when you come on, and what station we can find your program.
Sure, they can listen live Monday through Thursday, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern on Blog Talk Radio. Just look for Rod Eccles on blogtalkradio.com. They can also connect with me on Twitter. It's pretty simple. It's twitter.com/Rod Eccles, or look for me on Facebook at the Rod Eccles Show, a fan page.
Okay, that sounds good. Okay, I've really enjoyed our conversation. And I'll be looking for you both on the air, and I'll certainly be connecting with you on Facebook. I'm on Facebook every day. Okay, thank you for your time, and stay warm out there in New Hampshire. Don't forget spring's right around the corner. And I think our snow season is over. John, what's his name? Al Gore will be happy. Global warming finally here. Okay, thanks a lot for your time again, and hope you've enjoyed the program here on allpointstv.com, special program. And you can look for it again on the stream here at the studio. And we will be talking to you really soon. See you again next Monday at 2 o'clock from 2 to 3 for the program called What's Going On. Again, thank you for listening.